Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a less formal sort of discussion workshop. I want to invite everybody to turn on their cameras when and if possible, just so that we're talking to each other and to people. It's kind of nice than squares. You are invited to talk throughout if you would like. It's going to be more of a conversation and an experience. The plan for today is sort of, this is workshop 3. We're going to talk about contexts. So what really, market analysis, you could call it, strategy. We'll look at a couple sort of quick tools. And hopefully work through projects as groups together and just support each other and ask questions and see where we can go from there. As I was mentioning a little bit before, this is our first run at this as a pilot. And so we plan to sort of tweak the curriculum, our next iteration in October, to see how we can better work and suit you. I know that a number of you have submitted applications for either through the video pitch or the video or through a written pitch. We have sent the first round of pitches to our judges for evaluation, and we should have feedback or at least a short list to announce by the end of the week. And then we will be contacting the people of the shortlist to provide them with times for mentorship and work towards the presentation on May 5th. We're also working on starting with the video pitches, and what we're doing with the videos is we're sort of trying to analyze the different groups that submitted and what we can do within our networks to provide you with mentorship and what kind of resources we can help you with your projects. So it's this is kind of, we were talking, it's kind of unusual in that the highlight isn't so much the early bird prize necessarily, although that's definitely not a horrible thing to get, but it's more of how can we help you do what you're doing. And we may have other money or other funds and other opportunities for you. So how can we link you with other people and mentors? And we do have a number of mentors in our network. So it would be really great for everybody sort of towards the end of this 3 or 4 months to really have see progress in your ideas becoming more developed. So unless there are any major pressing questions, I suggest we start. Seeing none and seeing a couple faces, thank you for turning your cameras on. It's weird having done this for over a year now, how important it is to how presentations to blank screens are very hard. I know this. So the quick overview, we're going to talk about contexts. We're going to look at environmental scans and a SWOT analysis, which is really a type of environmental scan. All of these are just tricks and tips. It really isn't, they're not incredibly difficult things, but the devil's in the detail. And then we're going to run through a little SWOT workshop that we've prepared, which is both intended to use the tool, but we're also going to work with Miro, which is I don't know if any of you have had the experience with it. It's kind of a group tool that can be complementary to Zoom. And so hopefully it won't be absolutely a nightmare like it's been in the past at times. I know that my students absolutely despise it and refuse to use it. And I'm hoping you will be more open-minded. All right.
Sorry, Joseph. We have two questions in the chat before we
Perfect.
move for any further. So the first one is how many pitches were submitted, and the second question is does the video pitch preclude you from submitting later on?
No. So the pitches will be shortlisted to six approximately, likely a minimum of six. It's not any of us that are involved in this next stage of selection. We will get our six back from the judges and then announce them as soon as we can, at least to the teams. So those moving forward, once we know, there'll be sort of two prizes for the pitch. We decided that the studio audience can select their best group. So I know this is going to sound really bad, but maybe not bad. Entrepreneurial, creative. Get as many of your friends and colleagues and people to attend the pitches and watch them and vote for you. It's the one of the $5,000 prizes is an audience pick, and the other $5,000 will be a judge uh, pick. So, I mean, we're trying to support projects across the board and giving different opportunities. Maybe it's Canadian, we're spreading the peanut butter. So, basically, two prizes of $5,000 with six finalists. As soon as we know who they are, we'll be contacting them because we're going to try and work with you on your decks and pitches, and no, it doesn't preclude. The whole idea of this is we want to know who you are, so when you're out there, we can see if you submit a project or idea, uh, we want to be able to find people to work with you to improve it. So it's not just people that have already submitted, people that are working on projects. The whole idea behind this from the Praxis support is not that they're giving away a little bit of money here and there. It's that at the end of this, they hopefully will see some solid ideas that help people with spinal cord injuries. So it's the development of ideas that they're really after. Does that help?
And the last question was does the video pitch preclude you from submitting later on?
Not at all. So the whole idea is that we're going to try and support, even if you're not the one that gets or the ones that get the 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 award for early bird, we will try and find ways to support you. We do have other air pots of money that we could potentially draw on. We also have other experts, internships. The hard part from our perspective is that we're figuring out in the background is how are we helpful to you? So for example, we've had device X, three different groups that have submitted around device X that are saying they're working on device X. Wouldn't it be really nice if all three kind of talk to one another and see if they had complementary ideas, because they do. And usually we're very much in the entrepreneurial space, so we don't want to share. But if we can find a way to work together with those groups, I think all of their devices or all of their attempts may be better off for it. So that's what we're working on right now in the background. Does that make sense? Our goal is to help move ideas forward, to help people, patients, people with lived experience, society as a whole. So it's a bit altruistic. We don't really have a stake in one concept or one product developing. Jillian?
And for the land acknowledgement statement, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also like to acknowledge that as we are a virtual meeting, that many others may be on different territory as well. So please take the time to reflect on and honor the Indigenous communities of your territories.
Thank you. So just as a quick reminder, or for those of you just joining, the whole point of this is towards the end of July, we would like you guys or people to demonstrate a transformative, commercializable concept to improve the quality of life of people living with spinal cord injuries. So that's this challenge, and our goal, not just through the pitch, not just through the video entry, and not just these workshops, but overall over the next several months, is to find ways to help the people that are engaging with us through the ideation clinic to improve their ideas, so that it's not so much us that you're going to be presenting to as people like Praxis, investors, funding people who will look at your ideas, and hopefully you'll be able to sell them on more support. So that's the goal of this moving forward. What we're developing is this framework to discuss how do we do these kinds of things, innovations. And so the ideation key is kind of what we've worked on. It's an adaptation of design thinking. It's an adaptation of several engineering strategies, translational research strategies. And the idea is just to give you an overall broad way of thinking about innovation and developing innovation in a systematic and structured way that's iterative. It gives you some direction, but this isn't prescriptive. It's not only one way to do it or the only way to do it. It helps us organize sort of the way we mentor and help. And so we're now sort of, workshop 3 is kind of around the framing, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. The first step, we kind of said, let's talk about needs. So one of the things over time we've come to realize, I've come to realize, people I work with, lots of groups, is if you don't know the needs of the people you're trying to help, what they're looking for, that's absolutely paramount. In business, you call it market analysis, customer needs. In hospital speak, patient needs. But basically, the beneficiaries of whatever you're actually doing, if you don't know what they actually want, it's very hard to tailor your product, your service to their wants. And quite often, as within lean startup methodology, you want to reach out to people as soon as possible to find out where they're coming from, because it's easier to get a no, that's a dumb idea, when you're just starting out than when you've invested 4 years and $4 million. Kill your ideas quickly. And fail fast, fail early, and then learn from that to change what you're doing, is the concept. So we start with sort of, if you have a technology, and a lot of the clinicians or researchers I work with quite often have a technology and they want to sell it, and they want to commercialize it, or they want to do a project with it. Well, and even if you have a technology, you still have to go back to the people you're trying to help and ask them, what will this do for you? What do you think of this? Because if they hate it from the beginning, it's going to be very hard, even if you have the best translational clinical application, but nobody wants it. And there are lots of case studies around it. So once you've identified a strong potential for a need, how you frame the problem is also very important. You can solve many different kinds of problems in different ways, but unless you're sort of really zeroing in on a problem that is related to addressing the need, and your eventual intervention solves that problem and need, you're likely to miss the mark. So today we're going to talk a little bit about specifying an approach. Once you have a problem, once you understand a space and you know a need, how do you specify an approach? Then analyze that context so that you can establish a strategy. And notice that a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is long before coming up with the idea or the solution or ideating. A lot of this front-loaded stuff is incredibly important, because if you are not actually, if you don't understand the problem space, if you don't understand what you're trying to solve, then you're less likely to actually solve it. And I can't stress enough how, over at least my years of experience working with entrepreneurs and innovators, how if you're not solving the right problem, you're going to waste a lot of time. So the first step, so if you have a problem, and does anyone want to share a problem that they're working on, or I can grab one out of my sort of head?
One of the problems which came up was like how to train or exercise, right, when you have a spinal cord injury.
Okay, so the problem might be one of how do you exercise with a spinal cord injury? So, and that's a very legitimate sort of space to be working in. And so that one of the ways, now this isn't gospel, but a strategy that we can give to you to think about is, okay, well, that problem can be tackled in a number of ways. So it could be about a product. It could be about the structure of the delivery or the service or the thing, or the way that you interact or message people. So one of the things that's kind of important as you move forward when you do have a problem, how do we want to look at tackling this problem of exercise? So one way of looking at it, and this is once you kind of pick a strategy, you also have to go back to the beneficiaries and talk to them, people with lived experience. So maybe the bottleneck for this problem is the interaction. So maybe how they experience exercise or how you promote the message of exercising hasn't been reaching the audiences. It could be, but you need to explore and find out, has this been tried before, or is this potentially a fruitful way of working? Then how you structure your product or your intervention, the costs involved, what resources you have, your practices, all of these things are things that could be approaches for you to explore. Now, the reason it's sort of important to think about approach is all of these are going to result in different strategies and different thoughts and different ways to tackle this problem. You can tackle the exercise problem by producing, products that help with a particular exercise, or it could be an education system where you're getting people to think about exercising in a particular way. So you need to find out from the people you're working with which of those strategies might apply, and there may be multiple. Once you sort of understand a direction in your strategy, the next step is to start understanding where it lives. And what I mean by that is all of the stuff in it. And this is really the context. So there are different ways to understand the context and different strategies. The two I'm going to talk about really quickly is an environmental scan and a SWOT analysis, which is what we're going to sort of do today. And both of those very much, the environmental scan is a broader category of SWOT analysis. It's basically, how do you know where you're playing? What's your sandbox? And this can be done in a number of ways: literature reviews, market analysis. There are a number of databases that universities, businesses, accelerators have that will tell you, in this space, we have X number of Canadians or X number of Americans that have this condition. We have X number of people that deliver this service, and they basically cost this much. And so understanding what other people are offering, what the trends are, what the competition is like, the state of the art, these are all really, really important questions. If you are, for example, offering an ECG service using a huge block machine from the 70s, while your competitors are using a patch that you can shower with and is virtually invisible once it's under your clothes, you're going to have a very hard time selling your intervention to the people that you're looking for. Understanding your customers, understanding the economy, even labor, it really does depend on the particular project you're doing. But you're going to have to make some decisions. Where it's very different when you're dealing with people, with biotech, with healthcare delivery, is specifically in the regulatory, privacy spheres in particular. Although the other stuff has nuances, their medical devices, pharmaceuticals, services, healthcare delivery have regulations that are very different between jurisdictions, different even within some jurisdictions. Canada isn't one healthcare system. It's at least 10, arguably more. And so understanding how you can get in with a product, whether there's reimbursement, whether there's shred, all of these things are incredibly important. Any questions, comments? This is the due diligence part. The more you know about where you're entering, the better off you are. Even things like trials, clinical trials, device trials. It's important that you structure whatever your idea is, that it better lends itself to passing through these trials, because these things can be very expensive and waste a lot of time. I'll make these slides available, and so you can chase down. So can I see a show of hands, who has done a SWOT analysis before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is all I can see, maybe 6. I'm assuming almost. These are really popular and super easy. Porter, I believe, yeah, it was Porter, came out of it. It's super simplified way of doing and trying to understand the context of your service, product, or whatever. The problem is it's super simplified way of trying to understand, and it is only as good as sort of the depth to which you spend time doing this. So 4 quadrants really: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, SWOT. I've done a lot of these with a lot of groups. The problem is you don't know what you don't know. And your strengths, it's only as good as you are able to evaluate yourself and sort of be able to be honest, or bring in people that are externally can expose. So this is a structured, simple evaluation of your environment. The benefits is that this type of analysis can help you make decisions. So when we move to the next step, which is the really exciting stuff after this dry stuff, is how do we come up with ideas and refine our ideas and brainstorm and prototype, which Chris will be leading our next workshop based on some of his experiences. Hi, Chris. With his students. And that's the really fun part. This stuff, as much as I love talking about regulatory frameworks and understanding where you're going with legal IP strategy, this is not the stuff people generally love to engage with. But it is important because it helps you target your efforts. And I can't stress that enough, both either from the very beginning, from a research perspective or an entrepreneurial perspective. Time is money. And if you're barking up the wrong tree with the wrong questions, it will affect you. So I see there's a question. Azadeh?
No, it's not question, just
Okay. Sorry. So benefits. So weaknesses, you can overlook stuff. It all depends on the quality of your information. So if you're looking at the state of the art for research, but someone hasn't published their latest thing that they're getting a patent for, and you make a decision based on the information available, your SWOT isn't very useful because you don't know that you may have competition or you may have a research or a patented something that'll come out. So the other thing is, to make these valuable, you need to put effort into collecting the information. And quite obviously, the more information you try and collect, the more work there is, the more you have to either yourselves expend money or get research assistants or people to do the research for you. And that can be costly and time consuming. It's also very subjective in your understanding. So although this is a valuable tool, it's only as valuable as what you put into it and how you understand it. So it will not answer everything. Does that sort of make sense? Okay, so the last step in sort of this framing that I want to talk about, and then I want to move on, is once you have either an environmental scan or an understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, the next step really is to start making an action plan. And again, very much stress that this is all before you come up with a solution. Even if you have a research-based discovery or an idea, going through these exercises to understand the strategy is really important so that you don't overshoot or miss things. So for example, once you have your SWOT analysis, drafting from it your design requirements, what your thing that you're going to do will look like. Do you need to go through clinical trials or some other kind of trials to show either efficacy, safety, or other kinds of data that will then inform what you say about your service, product, or intervention? And this is really, it is very much in health delivery, this is a big deal. You know, if you're making a film or some other kind of product or solution, it's one thing. But if people's health and decision making is based on the kinds of data or your product or service will provide, there are regulations and things that you can claim and things you can't. So then your regulatory pathway. So especially a number of you submitted ideas around devices. Well, it's a big deal between a device that's used at home by somebody versus one that's used in a hospital setting. It could be the same exact device, but if it's used in the OR, it will be classified and it will be observed in one way. If it's used right outside the OR, the same exact device may have a different classification because the level of risk is deemed to be different. The other thing I have to stress is once you understand where you're going with this, coming up with an IP pathway or strategy is important. And this is even before we're talking about developing your product or your service. Understanding that, for example, if you're going to patent a device, whether you're going to patent it in one country, Canada versus the US versus Europe versus Asia is very, very important because it literally is the difference between $10,000 and $100,000 and for one patent versus a portfolio of patents, which may cost you a lot more. Not everything necessarily needs to be patented or is patentable. So understanding where your product or service is and whether you need to copyright it or patent it or protect it in some other way, make it a trade secret, knowing that up front will save you a lot of time and money. Quite often, without knowing this strategy, we've had experiences with researchers doing a presentation at a conference about their idea. Once it's out in the public domain, you can't actually patent it anymore, and it becomes a big problem. Finally, understanding the business models available to you is also really important. How you construct your intervention or approach needs to also be driven about thinking about what's the sustainable model. So it doesn't have to be, from my experience, there's a range of people that are interested in this space. In the ranges from I just want to do good to I can't wait to make my $1 billion. And you're probably somewhere in there. And it really does depend on your strategy and your thoughts. Sometimes you still need to have a business model and an IP strategy, even if you want to give things away, because you don't want somebody else to take your idea or your patent and prevent you from giving it away. And that can happen and has. Revenue model, quite obvious. So how are you going to pay your employees, yourselves, and sort of what are the costs involved in delivering your product? The other thing that is quite often very interesting about the healthcare space is reimbursements or SHRED. So in healthcare in particular, understanding who is paying for things is incredibly important. The person who uses the thing may not be the person who prescribes the thing, who may not be the person that purchases the thing, who may not be the person that approves the procurement of the thing, and may not be the person that actually is paying for the thing. So when you buy a cell phone, you usually are the one buying a cell phone. If you are prescribed a therapy by a doctor, your HMO, your insurance, your provider, your province may actually be paying, but it's sometimes the procurement officer at a hospital or a clinic that actually provides the vendor that gives the opportunity. So understanding all those things is incredibly important moving forward. Okay. Comments, questions? Seeing none. So here's what we were hoping to experiment with. as we move forward. What we would like to do is break it up into smaller groups. And in the small groups, if you could go to, I've got lots of windows open. If you could please go to Miro, the link should be in the chat right now. So hopefully, for some reason, I'm not seeing my Miro. Oh, there it is. Okay, I see 5 people logging on. Okay, so I know that in the next workshop, Chris is going to has said that he would like to use Miro as well. So I thought that in this round, we could sort of experiment with it and see if we can learn to use it a little bit for the next round so it's easier. So when you click on the link, so the first thing I'm going to ask is for you to click on that link. I hope you're still seeing my screen. The goal is in smaller groups, we're going to ask you to share an idea and go through some of this analysis and go through some of the strategic planning around it. So if you, once you're on Miro, if you will go to, there's a little icon at the very bottom that's called frames. If you will click on the frames, and when you click on the frames, it should open up a window or a panel on the right-hand side. And the first frame is called all. And if you click on all, it will give you sort of the landscape of everyone that's
Do I have to sign up, or how does it work? I don't get it.
Sorry?
Do I have to sign up, or what do I have to do?
No, there should be no sign up. If you use in our chat, there's a little link.
Yeah, I did use that, but then I don't see myself. I don't know where to go.
Well, did anyone else have an issue?
I think you should zoom out of it because they're so big. We cannot see it. So you just zoom out and you can see.
So usually when you press the one frame, if you look at my share, it should zoom you out.
Yeah, but it asked me to sign up, so I don't get it. Then
So
I'm not.
You don't need to sign up. You can say you're go as guest.
Yeah, but I don't know where I am.
Could you try closing it down and then try the link again? It should give you an option to say guest. So you don't need to register for any account or anything.
So I see, like, on my entire screen, I see, Joseph, like you're all, what you have the 4 kind of going in a row horizontal, but I don't see the thing on the left-hand side.
Okay, so that thing on the left-hand side is this. If you go to the bottom panel, at the very far left is this thing called frames. If you click it, it should open it.
I hate this. It always tries to sign me up when I click on something.
Oh. Yeah, on the left-hand side, I see there's you have to expand it. It's like the 2 arrows that go to the right, and then that's what opens up the frames.
Okay.
I do not understand at all how to use this thing because all I see is
I
one slide.
used it before. It's like a huge board and you have to kind of grab it.
Yeah, so this is a collaborative tool. One of the things that part of the rationale for trying to get you guys to work is if you can sort of master this, this is like a massive whiteboard with sticky notes that you can use for brainstorming. And so if we were all in the same room, I can give you a deck of sticky notes and say, go. And it has its own challenges. This has the computer. So Verona, you
Yeah,
have...
I got a name. I don't see myself right now, but
Okay, you should still be, you should just be a hand. So what we're gonna do, so I'm gonna just show you how to do this, and then we're gonna actually break up into breakout rooms, and we'll try and actually work on this. So number one gives you all of 4 of these frames. Number 2, 9, 16, and 23 will give you the specific one view of one of these boards. And I'm going to just lead you through the boards. So once you're on board 1, the next frame will take you to a venture, need, and problem. So once you're in your small groups, if you want to call your venture something, I'm going to co-opt the one that's number 1. So this is going to be a test, and I encourage you either to work with people that are part of your group, or in the small groups, if you want to just pick a topic or pick one of your projects without giving any of your secret sauce away, but so you can look at exercise. So of course I'm going to have issues with spelling because I'm being
CIS. CIS.
The beauty is spell check, if it works.
Yes.
So exercise, that may be a need, and the problem is, you know, you need specialized, well, it could be lots of things. I don't know what problem you could solve. It could be that you need specialized exercise, that there needs to be support, that it needs to be, you know, stimulation based, neuromodulation, lots of different approaches. But you may want to sort of just spend a couple of minutes with your group and talk about what it is you're trying to understand. So that if it's your project they're working on, give them a little bit of context. After the details, talk about strengths. So each of these are a sticky note. You can get more sticky notes simply by pressing Control D, which is duplicate, or by going to this menu on the left-hand side that says sticky note. And that will create a different colored sticky note for you to place on the strengths. And you can type whatever strength. So one strength might be is that your group has someone who does coaching. Another strength might be that there's research that says X, or you have some kind of resource. So spend a few minutes sort of identifying the strengths within your project. Now, if you get stuck, there is a guide at the side that I've placed on each of these boards that say things like, what's unique to your group or your program? What do you do better than others? So these are sort of and they're in the details frame. Once you have a chance to look at your strengths, follow up with weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Once you finish that, if you look at the center, actually, this is how, oh, someone, it's been moved around a little bit. I see. This is where you can start on putting it together. So if you have certain opportunities that are based on your strengths, then what kind of things can you put in as requirements to your plan, to your project? So this is now you're getting into the planning and the strategy and framing your project. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? So we're doing this for several reasons. One, to learn the tool. Another is to actually go through this exercise so you can do it on yourself and with your teams externally. But two, to get to know each other as people in this sort of space, because there may be synergies between each other. As you get to know each other, you can help each other with. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask Julia if you can start with 4 breakout rooms, or how many of us are there?
There's currently 23, and I've just set up the breakout rooms so that
Perfect.
they're even.
Okay, excellent. So whatever your breakout room is, go to that area. And if there are any questions, I can answer them now, or we can start working on this exercise. Remember, it's as much as you put in. So try this exercise. I think it'll be, and let's discuss how useful it is or not, and how it could contribute to your idea. I do suggest you start with sharing your ideas and where you could work on one.
Question.
Sure.
Sorry, are we gonna go through all of the, like, is it the intent to go through most of the frames? Or like, where should we start and which numbers do we go to?
So each of these, they're repeated. So each group will have one. If you look at 1, 2, and 3 are all repetitions, and 4 are all repetitions. So in each group, whatever group you are, if you're group 2, go to the 2 overview, which will be frame number 9. And that's where you'll start with that.
How do we
overview.
know which frame we have to go to?
As soon as we're done in the breakout rooms, whatever number your breakout room is, that's where you go.
So if we are like room 3, we're going to frame 3?
Yeah, into this 3 thing over here.
Because you said like for 2 it's number 9, so I got confused.
So if you look at the side where it defines it, you're right. They're numeric when you set up these little shortcuts. So just look at, if you're 2, look at overview 2.
So if I'm 3, I look at the overview 3.
That's right.
Okay.
And so on.
Thank you.
And hopefully that'll be a messy start. But part of this, I do genuinely believe, is getting to know these tools is pretty important as well, and figuring out how to collaborate with people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.